Hello again. So this is a video with a long interval between it and the last video. But in that interval, I've had time to, one, find my prayer rope. It was at the bottom of a backpack. So I had it, but I did not have it. Now I have what I had. And that has a lot to do, I think, with the distinction between passive and active. So this video will be about the title, which is Music, Light, and Honey. And as I was having dinner this evening, thinking what I would record, those three words came to mind. Now, years ago, if I was thinking in terms, I would say to myself, well, naturally, I should seek to find out why those words come to mind and how those words are interrelated and how their relations are related to other things outside them that I can now pull in like a cane around someone's neck to get them on the stage of my consciousness. But that is tiring work. And like so many tires on the Autobahn, while you're doing it, it's a joyride. But when you're done with it, you need a new set of tires. And that can become exhausting of your vehicle. Exhausting of, well, if you're not careful, your time itself. And so, what am I saying? The act of meditation in literary studies, or if you go through certain canonical texts of Western civilization, you find a discussion or a discussion of discussions cropping up of what is meditation? How would we know if someone is meditating, when they are meditating? Could we spot them? Mid-air, as it were, of their lofty ideals? Could we spot them in the tension of their high wire rope walk, slow and gradual to the other side of an extreme proposition? Could we, insofar as we would be in proximal distance to one, recognize them as meditators? And even phrasing the question in this way suggests a humorous treatment, a parody, in other words. I can't quote it verbatim, but there is a spot in Hamlet where, in one of his many soliloquies, he says, "Oh, with the wings of meditation." And then he imagines himself doing something that it takes 3/4 of the play to get him to begin doing. Well, the wings of meditation. Consider the simile, or is it a metaphor? I don't know. But at any rate, consider the statement, wings of meditation. Does that not seem to contradict itself? Birds have wings and birds are fast. This is why people train themselves with, what are those discs that spin? I forgot, in the air, and they shoot them? Pellets? I forgot the word. But at any rate, you don't just find a bird and talk to the bird and ask the bird how its day was, and the bird, as it were, sips its coffee with its nice wing and meditates on its past few hours with you. A bird flies away, reappears, flies away, goes somewhere, comes back. Who knows? And to compare that, or to put those wings, as it were, hot glued onto meditation, is what would make the lips rise and humor swell in the audience of Shakespeare's Globe. And there are other treatments like this in literature. And I would propose in this video, we eventually will come to music, light, and honey. But before we do, this preface, I would propose to you that one of the reasons for the incongruity, and hence the humorous treatment of this concept known as meditation, is behind it all, we don't trust ourselves to recognize a meditator when we see one. Maybe those movements are of a concerned person, a stern person, a depressed person, a highly motivated American who wants to be as efficient as possible in turning that corner. And so he simply looks down at the concrete to know where the curb is so he can immediately turn and compute where east is so that he can get to work well before time. However you want to spin it, we might just be using these words fluidly, so fluidly, in fact, that they are indistinguishable from each other and just reveal translucently the bottom of the pan and not gold in the pan. And I think this is one of the possibilities of fishing for semantics. To go to Hamlet again, when Polonius asks him, "What are you doing?" He says in one of the scenes, "Reading." And then this is followed up by the functionary of the king or the court jester, whatever Polonius is at the time. "Well, what are you reading?" And Hamlet says to him, "Words, words, words. Music, light, honey." It struck me when I was thinking about these three words, how much I take for granted. Not only when I say words, I pass so much air through them that I sometimes do not enunciate the vowels. Instead of saying for, I say fur. So I have to slow down as if I were on a high wire, concentrated, lest I fall. So these three words, at least for me, denote different things on different levels of reference. What do I mean? I will try not to go into the weeds with this, but music is such a, to my mind, gloss, this tarp. And depending on where you put the tarp, it could be a trampoline. Ah, yes, when I turn on the radio, I am hearing this phenomenon. Or when I sit down with my violin, I am making this phenomenon. Or when I'm enchanted by my friend or significant, I am hearing their phenomenon. And so it seems to speak to on the one hand, universal, because it's observable by witnesses and can be understood as if written for strangers. But at the same time, on the other hand, unique to the other person on the other side of the relationship. So that artist speaks to me. That artist in that genre gets me. Etc. But notice in the word music, it's more of a scope than an identification. So we return to this problem of how to spot someone meditating. You have this sense of a beaker being filled with time. And the more time, the deeper the meditation. But what is time? And what does it say about the deeper realities of the person at stake who is making sense of the height and the depth, who is ascending and descending in experience? All interior wise, we cannot see it. How do they see it? How would they know if they're doing it? How would they know, as it were, they were caught up in it or led down to it? Would they be able to, as it were, pinch themselves and say, oh, I'm meditating? Or is it supposed to be something as natural as a bird flying in the air against the wind and saying, ah, yes, I'm a bird, of course, this is what I do? It is hard to say because all of that was done through imagination. It wasn't proven, it wasn't demonstrated. And so, how can we be sure? This begs the question of music and its relation to words, words, words. Classical, Baroque, New Age, industrial, rock, pop. What are we limiting and what are we curbing and what are we filling when we identify groups? And why are we doing it? And from what place are we doing it? And are we sure it's not being done to us? Again, these are all questions. But I wanted to pair it with light, the next thing. What is light? Well, light is a very many things. When you see someone solve a Rubik's Cube, I dare say you are seeing light of a certain kind. When someone lights the end of a wick of a candle, obviously you are seeing light. When someone moves the piece of a checker across other checkers on a board, and you can't help but smile even though you're losing all your pieces, I would say there's a shimmer of light. And then there's the word light, raised to a level above the high wire, which admits of infinite frequency in our day to day. If we pay attention without clutching, and that is impossible to know without religion, I would say. And religion of a certain bias, religion of a certain How do you put in a word a lifetime? Imagine you are driving down the street and you look to your right, and there you see someone on the side of the curb because on their bicycle, they were daydreaming and they hit a part of the sidewalk block that was elevated. And not to draw this out, but imagine you are in one of two positions. Either you are a doctor, a general physician, or you are not. You are something else. Hitting the brake as a general physician, a nurse, a paramedic, you would open your car door and could move forward with a certain confidence, but also a certain urgency, a propulsion. But if you're not one of those things, then horror, impotency, incertitude might shatter in one. And I think this relates somehow to conversations in the Meaning Code with Karen Wong about anomaly. I'm not sure how, but I'm not so concerned with building up theory, because you can build and build and build something that is so big, there's no place for you in it or for a person inside. And I guess that might be where I'm going with the use of this word light. Light can come to a scope and make it a mag light, make it a magnification lens, where now I'm not just looking at all the ways in which I could break my bones if I fall from a great height, but I'm seeing the value of integrity itself, which is quite a different experience than simply being in fear of breaking something. The difference between a negative value and a positive value. And I think then, because I want to wrap up here, is a good place to go to the third word, honey. And I don't know why I chose that word, other than it's a powerful word, at least in my mind, to describe the phenomenology of process. Because honey doesn't grow on trees. Honey comes from the other end of a bunch of bees, a bunch of flowers, a bunch of space that these bees fly in, a bunch of time, as it were, clocked in minute hand and houred through the hexagon of several cells and wax walls before, to then be drawn out by a human being who wishes to make of all this work a what is it? And we call it honey. And even from that calling, we derive analogies which stick to other domains of life. And we find ourselves expanding in those directions. And then I thought about wherever it is in the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, the Torah, the description of the promised land as one flowing with milk and honey. And I said to myself, even though here I am speculating, honey and milk, cream and sugar, these are delicacies. These are rich. These are things which normally do not flow for us. They come here and there. They are rare. They don't flow. So why compare or juxtapose the flowing action with these refined, small unit things? And I think part of it is the versatility of honey. You don't just eat honey. You can do many other things with honey. You can preserve things with honey. In the Orthodox Church, candles often are made with honey or beeswax. So a part of the activity of the bee is the thing which we burn down in the liturgy, which is an instance of gathering the world to a concentration. But before I lose myself in all these different directions, hope, the virtue of hoping well, which isn't the same thing as, oh, I got to get through these hoops, up and down, left and right. I need to be as agile as a bird through all this bureaucracy with its branches and insignificant leaves and red tape and all those spider webs. Oh, gosh, old laws and precedents. No. Hope is a thing with feathers, and honey is a thing with time. Time is our friend, and honey is in the promised land. So, the virtue of waiting and patience. There I said "and" instead of "and." I didn't wait to come to the consonant. I just kept vowling it this time. But I think that is all. So, was this a meditation? Was this a concatenation? Was this nothing at all except a way to pass the time? Perhaps, perhaps, perhaps. But if I were to review what I had said, I would say that I have moved away from wanting to build a system in the mind where things necessarily socket wrench into and can be welded once and for all. I've moved, I think, away from that use of the mind, or I want to continue moving away from that use of the mind to a mind which is like a pair of eyes that wants to open the window to the world that God made, not the world that I made. And that is the adventure of this life and of the life to come. The experience of the church seems to tell me. So have a good night if you watched this video. And as we look forward to the next week, I hope you have a good one. That's all.